Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching or listening to this edition of The Extra Mile. My name is Darryl Kinsey Jr. My co hosts, Michael Ward and Jenn B, will be with me momentarily. Today is September 12th, 2024, a warm early fall day with clear blue skies across much of the East Coast. 23 years ago today, the weather was a similar warmth with blue skies and brilliant sunshine. But instead of happiness, Americans were in deep mourning. 24 hours prior, at 8:46 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11, which had left Boston's Logan Airport en route to Los Angeles, instead slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Television cameras across New York then trained themselves on the North Tower, and broadcasters speculated how, on a cloudless day, an aircraft had embedded itself into one of the largest buildings in New York City. Just 45 minutes later, at around 9:03 a.m., the speculation and the world as we knew it was shattered when United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower, to the horror of millions watching on TV in the United States and around the world. The devastation then spread to the nation's capital, where the Pentagon, our symbol of military might, was struck by American Airlines Flight 77. A fourth plane, United 93, which had been delayed on the tarmac before taking off and was destined to strike the Capitol building, was brought down by its passengers as they wrestled with the hijackers in one last act of defiance. While their sacrifice took place crashing in a nondescript field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the horror in New York only continued as the World Trade Center towers collapsed, killing thousands of innocent workers who had just been going about their day when terrorism struck. But in the chaos and destruction, there was heroism. There was Wells Crowther, also known as the man in the red bandana, that helped frightened survivors from the Sky Lobby in the South Tower's 78th floor get to safety before the building's collapse took his life. There was also Richard Cyril Rescarola, a former FBI official who guided many of his fellow workers at Goldman Sachs Stanley Morgan to safety before the collapse of the South Tower took his life as well. And not to be forgotten, nor the least to be named, the countless firefighters, EMS personnel, and police officers that ran into danger and certain death to rescue as many people as they could. 23 years on, the wounds of 9/11 for some 2,997 families are still open and fresh. We grieve with you. We mourn for you. For the survivors, many who live with immeasurable survivor's guilt, we see you and we are here for you. We pledged we will never forget you. Until the end of time, we will remember you all. We will now observe a 60-second moment of silence in memory of those we lost. Thank you. Well, now welcome in my co-hosts, Jenn B and Michael Ward, who are joining us. I see Larry B has also joined us in the chat as well. Actually, he's just left out, so never mind. But I want to thank you all for that time and that moment of silence. And we will start, of course, just with the conversation into what was a terrible day, I guess, with the question everyone asks each other. Where were you when things happened?
Hmm. I was in school, elementary school, if I remember correctly. I think I was in maybe the second grade, maybe first grade, and I think I remember my teacher having to turn the lights off for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
and we were told to keep our heads down, and of course I'm like really confused, and later on my dad comes to pick me up from school, and I was of course confused because it's like I think it was 2:45 when he came to pick me up,
Mm-hmm.
and we're walking home, and I just see the Pentagon on while the flames from the Pentagon, because where I was living, it there was like a hill, and you can see directly down
Mm-hmm.
to well, you can basically see a bunch of flames. What I'm trying to say, and we saw a bunch of smoke, which was confusing, of course.
I
And
didn't
then
know
I get
you were living in Virginia at the time.
that's the thing. I was living in D.C. Like I was living in a part of D.C. that was closer to Virginia, I want to
Okay.
say,
Yeah.
and we just saw like the smoke from the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
And I get home and I just see the North Tower on fire. And as a kid, I didn't fully grasp the what happened
Mm-hmm.
because it's still new to me. But I just heard a bunch of people died, and I think what really drove it home to me was learning about the the heroism that came when I watched the documentaries, because I think a few years later there was like a bunch of documentaries about what happened that night, and learning about I think one of my favorite stories, and I take this bravery to heart, is there was this man who had a crowbar,
Mm-hmm.
and he forced open the elevators that people were trapped in,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just going every floor, just forcing open elevators, just getting people out. And I thought that was the bravest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah. I was in sixth grade when this happened, actually taking a not math, English test at the time. And I remember our gym teacher came in to grab our teacher, who was the vice president, our vice principal at the school I was at. She grabs her the first time, and they go down the stairs to the principal's office. She comes back, and we don't think about much of it. I then remember not too long later, Miss Jenn comes sprinting back up, throws open the door, and just starts frantically waving for my teacher to come here. And they go tearing down the hallway. So I finished my test. I try to sneak down to the principal's office because he had a TV to try to see what happened. I couldn't get a good enough view. I could see a little bit of the buildings, but I couldn't see any of the smoke or fire, so I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want to stay there and get in trouble. So I left, went back to my class. They ended up sending all the kids outside, and one of my friends who was in seventh grade, they had a radio or the teacher had a radio in that class. She actually had the radio on, and that's how they heard what had happened in New York. And the Pentagon, I think, had not happened yet. So at that point, it had just been New York. And later, my mom came to pick me up from school because all the schools were closing because of what was going on. And as we're going over the bridge to Route 50 to go back to our house in Bowie, we see emergency vehicles just tearing down the road in direction of DC, and I'm assuming that's when the Pentagon was struck. So it was a very chaotic day. I can say that. Jen, you're up next.
Well, I was much older than both of you. I was 13 weeks pregnant with my oldest son, and I was homesick with horrible morning sickness. So I was
Oof.
actually sitting on my couch watching it happen on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I was watching the Today Show. It might have been Good Morning America. It was one of the two. And they said, "Oh my gosh, the World Trade Center just exploded."
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, "We're getting reports that it was an airplane. An airplane hit the World Trade Center." And then it just went on from there. And then the second plane hit. And then shortly thereafter, the towers started to collapse. Um, I had a cousin who lived in Greenwich Village that the whole family was trying to get a hold of, and we couldn't for the longest time. And my brother was at college in Pennsylvania. So when
Mm-hmm.
the last plane went down, and the only news that was released was that it was near a college in Pennsylvania initially, we were all freaking out because we didn't know what college. And my brother was in class the whole time. He didn't even have a clue what was going on. So he had no
Wow.
idea that we were all trying to get a hold of him and make sure that he was okay. And we did finally hear back from him and my cousin around 6 or 7 that night
Mm-hmm.
that
It
they were all
was
okay. Very scary, scary day.
it was hard to get any sort of cell phone reception that day at all. And of course,
Yes.
this would be the first time, I think, in our lifetimes where the entire world just shut down. There were obviously, you could not have a major event that night with everything that was going on. Air travel was basically shut down for obvious reasons. For the first time in the nation's history, ATC 0 was declared, which means no aircraft fly in the United States. And that really put a halt on sports, at least in the United States, for that weekend, which, to be honest, I don't know if we could have raced that weekend. I know NASCAR was supposed to go to Dover. Not Dover. They were supposed to go to New Hampshire. That race gets delayed until the end of the season. That's the race that Robbie Gordon famously spun Jeff Gordon, and they got into it. IndyCar was going to attempt to race in Texas, but the logistics of all of it, of trying to get everybody down there, whether or not they would have the security, it was just too much. They did not race. We know that MLB and the NFL did not play their games that weekend, or really the rest of that week. And Formula One, who was in Italy, they did race that weekend. Some of the teams ran special liveries to memorialize what had happened here. And then 2 weeks later, they would come and run the United States Grand Prix, which was the first one in a while in the United States at Indianapolis. That race would be won by Mika Hakkinen, his final race, his final race win of his career. But it was one of those weekends where it was one of those weeks where a lot of people wonder, should sports have gone on, because we needed the distraction. I don't think we could have competed. I
I
just go ahead.
I don't think we could have competed either. Just because, especially here in the United States, I think everybody was still, distraught over what happened, and also the logistical problems, the no flying, and all that. I think everybody just needed time to
Hmm.
process and to mourn. And so yeah, I understand if there was no racing at all.
Yeah, and I completely understand. And once we got back together, NASCAR would come back again at Dover, and just they started the tradition where everyone is now outside of the car during the national anthem. It used to be that everyone was in the car strapped in so they could immediately start the engines. That went away on September 11th, or post September 11th. Dale Earnhardt Jr. ends up winning that race at Dover, and the picture that will always be remembered by everyone is Junior grabbing the American flag and doing the burnout at the end of that race. And it was that moment that we needed to heal and to unite as a country. And that is the one thing I will always remember.
I don't think I've ever seen our country more united or feel more united
No,
than during those times.
yeah. There was no, that is the one time, well, I will say that for that next year, there was no Democrat, there was no Republican, Libertarian, whatever. It was just everybody was an American at that point. And we all needed to do that healing together. There were American flags wherever you could put them. Everybody had them on their car. We had some in our yard. Every overpass, somebody taped an American flag up. And unfortunately, there were segments of our country that decided to take things out on our Muslim brothers and sisters in this country. Unfortunately, that has continued. But what I will say, what 19 people did does not color 2 billion. That's the estimated number of Muslims that are in this country, are in this planet. Sorry. It's one of the largest religions on the world. 19 do not speak for 2 billion. And that is one of the things that I will always remember myself, us uniting and us healing afterwards. And we all said we will never forget. And every year we must remind the future generations, because that's the thing. We now have a generation behind us that does not remember that day, does not remember what we saw. And for those of us that unfortunately lived it, we have that duty to spread not just what happened that day, but the heroism and the camaraderie that came after. So at this point, we're going to take a break. We're going to pay some bills, and we're going to get into some of the racing that went down last weekend. We'll be right back here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at iSports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
And we're back here in the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Darryl, Jenn, and Michael here with you this evening. We're now going to get into what seems trivial, but talking the business of racing. And we're going to start with reviewing what went down in Atlanta. And I will start with the curious case of Denny Hamlin because Jenn, he had the plug wire issue in qualifying, and I've never seen a driver intentionally punt on a race before, but that's what I describe what he did, is he did not get up the 30s until like the last 20 laps of that race.
Yeah, it was different. That is a very different approach. I don't get it.
We don't get it either. Michael, I don't know if you saw what Denny Hamlin did, but he basically hung around until the 30s, tried to come up front. Apparently his plan for the day was just trying to get 20 points. Well, he ended up finishing 24th because he ends up in the final wreck because Ricky Stenhouse Jr. doesn't know where his brake pedal is. And he's put himself in quite a hole starting the playoffs.
Yeah, he's not in a good spot here going into the playoffs.
Yeah. My issue with what just happened here is that now you've put yourself in this hole. Now he's now put himself in this hole where he has to rely on Watkins Glen, which is coming up this week, and the next race at Bristol to try to get into the playoffs. Now, he's had a good run at both of those racetracks, but anything can happen in a NASCAR Cup Series race, and it often will. So I don't know if punting on this race, even though he has an aversion to crashing at these super speedways, makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
Not-
you
not
gotta
for
go ahead.
sure.
Go ahead, Jen.
It's putting yourself in a hole.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think this race would be really good to punt in either. It's just, you set yourself back for one race, and then the next race, you might be in a must point in scenario or a must win scenario. It's just, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you go for it now with everything you got, and the next race, if you win, you're safe. if you have a good points day, you're also safe. I just think, the idea of punting in a playoff scenario, I don't think that's a good idea.
It's not a good idea at all. Joey Logano did end up winning that race because, of course, Joey Logano does. Daniel Suarez so close to grabbing that win, ends up sliding back in the latter stages of that race. But Joey Logano automatically advances into round number 2. Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron are the top 5 in the playoff standings. Not safe yet, so got to get through Watkins Glen. On the other end, though, on the bottom end of this scale, we'll jump down there. Kyle Larson, ever since he made that greatest race car driver in the world comment, or ever since that comment has been made, it has been week after week of the struggle bus for Kyle Larson. This new one, he's running third, and we're not sure if the car just stepped out or he lost a tire, but he wadded up a next-gen car about as good as I've ever seen one wadded up. It didn't help that Chase Briscoe ran into him. Thank God Larson's okay, but he's now only 15 to the good, while Chase Briscoe, he is 21 down and in near must-win territory heading into the Glen.
I mean, he's the greatest race car driver in the world. He'll be all right.
The whole world. Better than Max, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell Chris.
Max is chopped liver.
Chris, unfortunately, feeling a bit under the weather. He will not be joining us this evening. But
that's okay. He probably needs to calm down before the Baku Grand Prix.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that, which we'll get to later. But Atlanta, I will say, the track is definitely returning to its roots. A lot of complaints of cars being loose and drivers struggling to handle, which is what you want to see out of Atlanta. However, is it going to stand up with this super speedway configuration? We'll find out. But I'm just grateful there was no really big one at Atlanta.
Yeah.
So now from there, we head to Watkins Glen and the battle at the Glen for round number 2 of this round of the playoffs. So the Go Bowling at the Glen at Watkins Glen International. And this is a race where if you are Hendrick Motorsports, you are excited. I believe the stat was since 2017, a Hendrick Motorsports driver has won at this facility. And if you are a Kyle Larson and a Chase Elliott, who are 8th and 10th right now, you're real excited about that. And William Byron and Alex Bowman as well. Is this going to be the place where you could automatically lock yourself into the playoffs?
If it's a great race for Hendrick Motorsports. So I definitely expect Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, maybe even Willie B, to definitely be up there this weekend.
Mm-hmm. And while we're on the subject of Willie B and Alex Bowman, why do so many people want Alex Bowman out of that car? They just had to put out the rumors, Hendrick Motorsports this weekend, had to put out the rumor that Alex Bowman would be getting removed from the car in 2025 for Kyle Busch. Now the rumor is Alex Bowman is going to be loaned out to Spire by Hendrick Motorsports in 2025 because Justin Haley is over there. And Jen, this sounds like somebody is pushing an agenda to get that 48 seat away from Alex Bowman at this point. It's just so weird.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't been terrible. I mean, he hasn't been spectacular, but he hasn't been terrible. So
don't let Chris hear you say that.
If it's not 24, I don't care.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense.
I don't get it. Alex Bowman is fine. Okay? He is a multiple-time race winner. He gets to the top 10 in the playoffs almost every year. He's got 4 wins this year, by the way. I like to remind people that say Alex Bowman is washed. He has 4 wins on the season.
This season?
I believe this season. I'm going to check that, but he's a multiple-time winner this season. I don't understand why people hate him so much.
I don't know. I feel like it's like if you're in like a top seed, and I guess Hendrick is like the top of the line, the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not winning all the time,
mm-hmm.
like Larson or maybe Elliott, then you're not deserving of that seat. It's kind of like Formula One, where like if let's say like Sergio Perez, he's racing for Red Bull, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
not performing well, so everybody's just like, oh yeah, he should get out of the seat.
Not performing well is an understatement, by the way.
Okay, yeah. But like if he was performing, as well as Max, everybody wouldn't say anything. But when you're, all I'm just trying to say is that when you're not performing as good as your teammates, everybody starts to scrutinize you. Is what I'm trying to say.
I did misspeak. Alex Bowman only has the 1 win this year, but William Byron, second on the board at HMS in wins. That's another one everybody keeps talking about needs to get fired. He has 3 wins.
People think William Byron needs to get fired?
Folks do not like William Byron or Alex Bowman at Hendrick, and I don't get it. Willie B has 3 wins. They have more.
Are we going to fire Kyle too? I mean, we might as well while we're at it.
We might as well. Larson has 4 wins.
Were you guys here last year when he almost won the championship?
I mean, the guy everybody likes, Chase Elliott's got 1 win this season. And Willie B's got more top 5s and more top 10s than Chase Elliott. And by the way, Alex Bowman, the guy everybody wants fired, has the same amount of top 5s and the same amount of top 10s as Chase Elliott.
They're like the same driver.
They are literally the same driver this year. Chase has 1 stage win this year to Alex Bowman's 0, and 213 laps led to Alex's 19. So it's been a down year for both of those two.
It has been, but that still doesn't make any sense to me. It's like they're fine. Like, what do you want?
It reminds me in the NFL of the conversation around Brock Purdy the last couple of years, where everybody's talking about San Francisco and whether or not their quarterback situation is stable with him as he is leading his team to a Super Bowl.
Right.
As he is winning the first half of a Super Bowl before Kyle Shanahan does a Kyle Shanahan. And we're still talking about whether or not he can do the job. I think Purdy can do the job, just like Bowman and Byron. Right. I think they can do the job of driving for Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah. I mean not everybody can be Kyle Larson. He's the best in the world.
He's the best, the greatest racing driver in the world, as I have a mental image of him spinning in Michigan.
Oh, God, don't remind me. Oh, God. NASCAR fans need to cool off with some of these driver conversations. That is what I will say. What we're not going to cool off with, however, is the charter discussion, which before we get started, which actually we're going to go ahead and get into it. The charter has been signed by 13 of 15 teams. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, the only teams that did not sign it. And I'm going to let Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic, they're doing their podcast, The Teardown, for Dirty Mo Media. I'm going to let them explain how this deal came down. Take a look at this.
From what we understand, then sends the 105-page charter agreement to the teams around 5 or 6 p.m. From what we were told on Friday night. And they say, you guys have until midnight to sign this.
Over 105 pages.
Well, that's what we understand.
No,
right?
no. Just
Yeah.
can you imagine that you've got like 5 hours to go over this 105-page document?
Well, I would say you would think that I don't think it was the first time that they've seen this. Now it was a revised version,
Yeah.
just some slight
It
revisions.
had been
but-
redlined.
So you would probably just be able to look at the changes that were there. But still, it's 105 pages. It's a big deal. But NASCAR basically made it known that if you guys don't sign this by midnight, we will revoke your charters. We're taking them. Not from our understanding, people we talked to, not like listen to your deadline. We might take them. We will take them. That's it. You're done if you don't sign this by midnight. So 13 of the 15 team owners, not thrilled, but they fall in line. We have posted a story on The Athletic with a bunch of quotes from various team owners, most of whom did not want to be identified for fear of retribution. It's been compared to putting a gun to our head, one said. Communist regime.
A team owner did compare NASCAR to communism. Correct.
So nobody, I don't say nobody. There was a couple of teams that seemed okay with
there's
it.
pieces of the deal that there's pieces of the deal that people are looking at. This is a really positive thing for us. This is good, and there's other parts of the deal you're like, yeah, it's not what we wanted, but that's kind of how deals work, right?
So that is how the Dirty Mo Media guys characterized what happened with this charter deal and how things came about. You can read that article on theathletic.com right now. The first thing I will say to you three is the person that compared NASCAR to a communist regime, I got $5,000. That was Richard Childress that said that.
Man.
Absolutely believe Richard Childress
sounds
said
on
that.
point. That
He
would not surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was the one that said that. But Chris and I had a conversation about this on our Discord, our private Discord during the week, and I am absolutely pissed that this is how the deal came together. NASCAR did not. Let's keep it a buck. If you've been following this, you know NASCAR. Their whole thing was give bad deal after bad deal after bad deal. And then you get to Atlanta and they basically threaten the teams with losing the charters they've paid millions of dollars for. And you want to know how happy they were to sign the deal? Jeff Gluck tweeted out that I talked to Rick Hendrick as to why they signed the deal. And he just said, we were tired. No one signed the deal because they liked it. They signed the deal because they were tired of fighting and didn't want to lose their money. That is the type of relationship we are going through at NASCAR and our teams. 2311 should go to court and sue NASCAR over it at this point because they didn't. It is obvious they did not negotiate in good faith. And the other issue is you're going to forcibly take something from us that we spent millions of dollars for after you won't even talk to us about the changes, and you sprung them on us at 5 o'clock and said you have by midnight to sign it. There is no way anybody signed that deal in good faith. And it just goes to the point. We say it with IndyCar and we say it with NASCAR. These are two great sports and we love them. The current brain trust cannot be allowed to stay and run them into the 21st century. They just cannot. The union busting rhetoric of the 60s is not how we should be running the second largest sport in America in 2024. Absolutely not.
Agreed. Like I couldn't believe that when I saw that they gave them like less than 24 hours. Well, less than 12 hours for that matter to make a decision.
Hmm.
That's absurd. Like that goes against like every rule in the book.
It's something you can't do in business. Just you
No.
cannot conduct business like this. And who knows what this means, what precedent this sets for the future. But I really hope that that we have some better leadership for NASCAR coming in soon. But it's not great. The charter conversation is not good, and hopefully 2311 and Front Row Motorsports get what they want out of the deal. If not, well, hopefully we're in court soon. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, the championship battle is set in Indianapolis, and Formula One heads to Baku, and what's going to happen with Papaya Rules. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. Here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
And we're back here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Darryl, Jenn, and Michael here with you this evening. And folks, we are just 2 weeks away from the start of the Saturday Night Hydroplane League season, and Division One is ready to rock this year. I will be on the commentary, of course, on YouTube. The season will get started September 28th and September 29th on youtube.com/Saturday Night Hydroplane League. Check that out for all your virtual hydroplane racing action. So let's go ahead and get into, we'll start with IndyCar, get in a brief discussion of the upcoming championship. We do have some silly season news to get to. Santino Ferrucci and David Malukas will be teammates next year after Ferrucci inked a deal to stay with AJ Foyt Racing. Those two seem to get together, or seem to get along, AJ Foyt and Santino Ferrucci, but with David Malukas there, Michael, I will say it is one of the IndyCar teams of all time.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. It's a certainly a very interesting lineup, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. And Jenn, Ferrucci, he's been a little bit of a firebrand the last couple of weeks. His seeming war with Roman Grosjean had us all entertained, but Do you think he can take some steps and grow as a driver with AJ Foyt Racing going into next year? Jesus, how does he really feel?
I'm so sorry.
It was just so sudden.
I mean, everybody has a chance
Mm.
to do better.
All right, I should be on that.
Oh, goodness.
I say Michael says no.
Yeah, I think Michael has answered that question for us. Let's look at the championship standings going into Nashville Super Speedway, which, by the way, one of the best ovals for IndyCar. So glad it's back. Thank you, Tennessee Titans, for messing up the street course with their stadium construction. Cannot wait for this race. But Alex Palou leads the way at 525 points. Will Power, 492 points. Scott McLaughlin still mathematically involved in the championship. However, the minute Alex Palou and Will Power start their engines, he is eliminated from the championship. And that led to a funny exchange on Twitter where Scott McLaughlin, who is absolutely winning the Formula One IndyCar Twitter game right now, tried to invite old Alex Palou over for some personally made sushi. Alex Palou turned that down. So he will not be having food poisoning before the start of the race at Nashville. And it's pretty simple for Alex Palou. Start the race, run relatively well. He's the champion. But after what happened in the Milwaukee Mile race 2, Jen, where they had the issue with the battery, I think he has to be concerned that this championship is not as set in stone as he thinks.
Yeah. I mean, the way all racing has been going this year, nothing is set in stone, it seems.
No.
Nothing is safe.
No, we thought we were going to have like a much worse championship than we did this year in Formula One. And now all of a sudden it is a wonderful battle. Alex Palou looks to be going to win this championship, and he's going to mediation with one of his contract lawsuits. So that's getting wrapped up. But it just, nothing will be settled into the checkered flag flies at Nashville. And even though he's already done it a couple of times now in winning a championship, it doesn't get any less stressful trying to win one of these. So he's probably going to be on pins and needles on Sunday. And there's always going to be a sound in the car that you've never heard before that it starts suddenly making about 20 laps from the end, and he's going to have to manage that. And as for Will Power, all he can do is go for the win and hope something happens for Alex Palou. Hopefully none of his teammates cause any issues with Alex Palou, because with the year that Penske has had in IndyCar with cheating scandals, the last thing you need is one of those cars making contact, or anyone in general making contact with Alex Palou. But that race will be on NBC, the last IndyCar race on NBC. And I wish we could get Lee Diffie there for it, but Lee Diffie will be in Watkins Glen. And while we're on the subject of Lee Diffie, called his first first couple of NASCAR races now. How do you guys think he's done? I mean,
I think he's been phenomenal.
He's one of the GOATs for the reason. And I think he's just carried it over to NASCAR. Like I said, he'd make a soapbox derby sound like the Monaco Grand Prix. That's how good he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's done very well.
Yeah.
Monaco Grand Prix could be exciting.
Sure.
Well, it's exciting for me this year anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of exciting races for Ferrari this year. There's been a lot of exciting races for Formula One in general that we didn't think we were going to have. And now we are going to chaos personified, which is the Baku Grand Prix in Azerbaijan. And
I
this
have
is
so
the
many
race.
fun memories of this race.
Yes. And this is the race where Max Verstappen is desperately looking for some sort of fire break between him and McLaren as they are storming towards the championship. More than likely, McLaren this weekend will take the constructors' title or the lead in the constructors' title. The drivers' title, that's probably going to come down to Abu Dhabi. But with the way that the RB20 has been running, I really think in Max's body language, this championship might be over for him.
Yeah.
And Darryl, tell me how you really feel. I'm just kidding.
I mean, if you listen to the radio last week, I mean, Max just sounds defeated.
Yes.
He really
is-
does.
It's surprising to hear him not sound as confident as he usually is.
It's been a rough go.
It has. And that car just does not look aerodynamically stable at all. He doesn't have the balance to turn in, as Chris mentioned to us last week. And the one thing that is saving them right now is the fact that McLaren has bottled these first couple of races where they have the advantage with Lando Norris with the whole papaya rules story. Michael told us before we went on that the rules are now being relaxed. In a story from MSN.com, Oscar Piastri has said that he's going to be a team player for the rest of the season to try to help Lando Norris get that title. Michael, do you think they waited too late because they've already cost themselves a boatload of points?
It's hard to say because Formula One is just, it's so unpredictable. You don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow or at Brazil, not Brazil, or Abu Dhabi or any other race. I think it's too late. I think we start playing this game at Hungary where, you know, they managed to undercut themselves, and from then on we just have to play team orders rule. Now I know a lot of people don't like team orders, but it's kind of how we have to do things here.
It's unfortunate that team orders have to come into Formula One, but when you only have two cars, that is just what happens. There's nothing you can really do about it. And right now, the Hungary win of Piastri winning Hungary, not switching those cars. I don't care if you screwed his strategy. Lando Norris is higher in the points. You've got to switch those cars around. Yeah. That win is, that win just looks so bad for them right now. And that could cost them the points because right now, Lando Norris has to average 8 points per race into Max Verstappen's lead to win the title. It would probably only be 4 or 5 right now if he wins Hungary. They should have done something to switch those cars around. And I think it's going to cost them. I think it could cost them. I still think Lando's going to win this championship.
I also think they should have changed to switch the cars around at Monza too.
If you switch the cars around at Monza, Lando ends up getting the fastest lap there. That's an 11-point swing between him and Max Verstappen. They have to hope, and it's probably going to continue at this point because we're 9 races to the end, and I don't think they have the money to put the upgrades to save the RB20 at this point. By them, I mean,
if you remember what Chris was saying that they're thinking about going back to, the car they had at the beginning of the year, which It may help or it may not help, but you know, a lot of the teams have gotten faster than they were at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that might, if they do that, I think that might actually hinder them.
I think the issue with here's my issue with okay, we're gonna go back to the RB20. All the teams have gotten faster. Everyone around them has gotten faster than what the RB20 was when Max won 7 straight races. I don't think switching from that car suddenly makes him a lot faster to where he's going to beat those guys by the margins he was beating them, because that McLaren has gotten better. The Ferrari has gotten better. They might be able to stave off Mercedes because that car is just a diva. It doesn't know what it wants to do. But you look at Ferrari, you look at McLaren, that's going to be a hard bridge to get over. And we already know how Max tends to drive when he's challenged. See 2021. If he crashes into Norris and takes them both out, that's going to hurt both of them in the end, because that is less points that Max can gain to save his lead. And we saw what happened in what was going to happen in 2021 until the officials got involved. It would have cost him the championship and cost him. It could end up costing him again, because I don't think he's, to be honest, I don't think he's matured that much from the 2021 battle.
There's another, don't let Chris hear you say that.
I'm just telling the truth. Listen to his radio communications.
That's what
if
I was
anything, it's
gonna
gotten
say.
worse.
Yeah.
It's going to be troubling. And on the other hand, we do have some cars that are going to try to play spoiler, of course, like the Mercedes duo of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, and maybe Aston Martin with Fernando Alonso. And that team is looking to become a power because they have officially signed Aston Martin to a multiple year deal starting in 2026. Newey will be designing the car over there, which coincides perfectly with the new aero changes that are coming in 2026. Now, the question
Also, they got
is,
a new factory and a new wind tunnel.
yeah, so they have all those things for Newey to play with. Do you think this is going to make Aston Martin one of the top teams in Formula One when that changeover comes?
Well, seeing as how in 23 they were up there when Newey wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they fell off this bad. It's still perplexing to me. But considering how they were up there last year, I think they can very much so be, if not up there, they could definitely be a regular winner.
Well, I'll tell you why they fell apart. One of the drivers is named Lance Stroll. That's why they fell apart. I don't imagine they're getting much information out of him. And the thing is, we know Lance Stroll is going to be there in 2026. I know everybody keeps saying, oh, he might leave for Max Verstappen. Lawrence isn't firing his kid. Like, unless there's a boatload of cash or a threat.
If you think about it, because it's like, if he wasn't there and you get like somebody like, I don't know, Pierre Gasly or who's somebody else that's like on the outside looking in that could really use a good shot? Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz.
I mean, Nick DeVries. Nick DeVries never got a shot.
If you ask me, Mick Schumacher never got a shot.
That too.
If you really want to go down this list.
Yeah. There's so many drivers that never got a real shot to develop that could use that seat. And it's the ultimate coach's son story with Lance and Lawrence Stroll. And that's sad because that car and that team should be a heck of a lot better. And unfortunately, they're not. And I think if you put Lance in a Newey designed car, and if Fernando Alonso is just lighting it up and he's still back there finishing 7th, 8th out of the points, I don't know how you keep him in that seat. At some point,
that's another thing. The team dynamic in that team isn't also really good because I think this was at Hungary where they switched the cars around. It was Fernando ahead of Lance. They switched the cars around to try and catch. I think it was Sonoda maybe. To try and catch Sonoda. Lance couldn't catch Sonoda, so they tried to switch the cars back around and give Alonso his spot back, but apparently Lance didn't. He didn't obey the order. So now I'm just thinking, okay, so the team dynamic isn't very good. You have one guy who's not listening to team orders, and the other guy who wants to win championships, and you're not delivering him a car that's going to win championships.
It's going to be a struggle, and they've got to get it figured out because there is no excuse when Adrian Newey starts tuning the wrenches, not tuning the wrenches, but putting the pencil to paper. But as we get into Baku, I don't even know if we have the time to go over all the crazy stuff that has happened at this race. I think the first objective for anyone is to survive what could be a very exciting race.
Yes, and this race, we remember when this race first got introduced to us, and we thought this was going to be the most boring race ever.
I remember that we were on the show the week of the first race, and I think Caitlin and Lita were with us at that time, Michael, and we were just slagging off how bad this race was going to be, and it was an absolute chaos. It was absolute chaos.
It's delivered, I think, about a good 6 years of good racing.
Yeah, I think 60% of the time it's put on good racing. So I'm going to say it's going to be fun.
I still remember Lewis Hamilton sailing off into the distance in turn 1.
I mean, we had that. We had Roman Grosjean wrecking himself somehow, and the radio, I think it was like Hulkenberg hit me or something.
It was Lance hit me.
Sorry, say that again.
It was
Parrot. I keep talking over you. I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
It was Lance hit me. Lance Stroll hit me.
Yeah, it's like Lance hit him, and there was nobody.
There was nobody
in the camera shot.
He was like 3 seconds back.
Yeah. There was, I think it was Vettel at the time, getting the penalty for running into Lewis on the caution for some reason. We still don't know why he did that. And then there was the Verstappen and Ricardo incident, which pretty much broke that relationship.
Yeah, I think it sealed. I think it also sealed the deal for Ricardo to leave Red Bull. Which, if we always still say it, but it's like, what if Ricardo never left Red Bull?
I think he would be in such a better position if he hadn't left there. But it was an untenable position, unfortunately. And now he's trying to get back to the team, but I don't know if there's really a seat there for him. And I don't really know what his future in Formula One is.
I think it's over, honestly.
Well, he can't keep taking up a seat at a junior team.
I mean, Aston Martin might want him if, they had an extra seat.
Well, the coach's son has to stay over there for that ride, so.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's why I say Formula One is a very tricky sport if you're a driver to get into, because there's so many promises, contracts, a whole bunch of other stuff that'll get in your way of that.
Yep.
You should go to IndyCar and win like Polo was doing.
That'd be fun. See him in IndyCar. But hey, it's going to be an incredible championship weekend for IndyCar. NASCAR's got round 2 of their playoffs to decide who's going to be in a good spot and who is in danger going into Bristol. And of course, as we just said here with Baku, a wild and wonderful Formula One Grand Prix ahead of us. Final thoughts before we go. Michael, IMSA announcement that Genesis, one of the Hyundai brands, is going to be coming to WEC and eventually the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship with a LMDH hypercar. You excited?
I am very excited. Bring all the hypercars here. we will not say no. Trust me. If
Yeah,
you
hopefully
got
we get a lot
car
more
with a battery in it, bring it on over. Tell them Mike sent you.
Yeah, and I'm planning on actually going to the Rolex 24 in January. So
Cool. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, gonna try to finally see that race live for the first time. Can't
Are
wait.
you going to stay awake for the whole 24 hours?
Probably not. I'm taking my fiance with me, so we're probably gonna go sleep at some point. So we are gonna enjoy that, and we'll definitely do some video and have some fun at the Rolex 24. But hey, we're gonna get ready to get out of here. For Jenn and Michael, I am Darryl. This has been the Extra Mile, and hey, we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.